All right, welcome back to another episode of Classic City Sports. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard along with Jonathan Williams. It's going to be a good show. We took last week off. It was the bye week, had some stuff going on as well, so figured it was a good time to take a little bit of a break. But missed you, buddy. We're back. And now we
I
get
kind
to
of missed
talk.
you.
You kind of missed me. This guy,
Kind of.
this
Just a
freaking
little
guy.
bit.
So this is going to be a good one though. It is Florida Hate Week. We get to talk about the game that everyone anticipates every single season. Everyone gets super ready for. It's a huge rival game. Even though Florida is not good this year and they've got a losing record, it is still a game that all Georgia fans get excited for, all Florida fans get excited for, no matter who is winning and who is not.
Yeah, that's how you know a rivalry is special. When no matter the circumstances, no matter what's at stake, it's always special. There's just as much hatred, there's just as much disagreement, and there's just as much build up to the game as well. I mean, heck, the two schools can't even agree about how many games have been played in the freaking series. You know, you ask Georgia, there's been 100. You ask Florida, there's been 99. So, I mean, that tells you what kind of rivalry this is. You can't agree about anything. There couldn't be two polar opposites. They couldn't be more opposite from each other. You got the ugly blue and green and you got the red and black, it's just all of it coming together just creates this ginormous rivalry. Then you got the world's largest outdoor cocktail party going on before the game. It's insane. It's a great environment. And so this week, definitely, it's always something special and it always produces great content. It's always a great thing to talk about.
Absolutely is always a great thing to talk about. So we're going to get into that. We're going to hit on a couple other little things as well as we go along. And you got to talk about, obviously at this point in time, it looks like Georgia's not going to get that home night game. And so, or any night games really this season, it sounds like at this point, outside of you get those 3:30 games that might finish up in the dark at that point because they're later in the season. So we're going to kind of cover that a little bit as well. Then you get the Classic City Pick'ems and you get a Georgia Florida inspired King of the Hill. So we got something there for you as well. So, but let's get straight into it. When you look at this game and you see Georgia where they're currently sitting and you see Florida who is struggling this year, what kind of mindset do you have going into this weekend? And try to I know you as a fan, you can look at it and say Georgia should be, perfectly fine and stuff, but try to look at it from a perspective of you got your head coach trying to keep your team's mindset correct, in the right place. How do you approach this if you're on the team?
I think the best way to approach this game is you have a loaded back half schedule. So again, this is it's okay to kind of look ahead without actually just focusing on okay, we got number 3 Tennessee at home next week, blah, blah, blah. Use this. If I was on the team or if I was a coach on the staff, I would use this game as a way to build up some momentum, build up some confidence, and really just get the ball rolling real fast going into this back half of the schedule, because that's what you're going to need. I mean, it's a loaded schedule. You got Mississippi State still on the schedule. You got ranked Kentucky still on the schedule. And as I said before, you still got Tennessee as well. So a lot of big games squeezed all into this last half of the schedule. And this is the biggest part of the season where you really got to make your run for the college football playoff. And you got to survive it. You have to. It's really crucial, because if you do, it sets you up in a prime spot to be in the college football playoff regardless of what happens in December. So I think that's kind of how I would approach it if I was on the staff of take care of business against Florida. Obviously, I don't think you have to tell the players to focus on Florida. You dang sure don't have to tell Kirby Smart that he needs to stay focused on Florida. I mean, he's shown in the past he cannot stand this team. So, but I will say it'll be interesting to see the new dynamic of this rivalry with Kirby Smart and Billy Napier, because it was pretty evident that Kirby Smart did not like Dan Mullen whatsoever. Could not stand the guy.
Did anyone that wasn't a Florida fan, and Florida fans only early on in their in his tenure there, because late on they started really disliking him as well. Obviously then he got fired. So, but Dan Mullen was just a very unlikable guy.
Yeah. He didn't help his case very much.
No, when you start showing up at press conferences after your team got in a huge fight on there, and then you show up wearing a Darth Vader mask and having fun, I understand I think it was Halloween or whatever it was at the time, whatever the situation.
But my point being is that, Billy Napier came out this week and accredited Kirby Smart, saying that he would not be the head coach at the University of Florida if it weren't for Kirby Smart. Going all the way back to 2011, I believe it was. Billy Napier was fresh off of getting terminated over at Clemson for being the offensive coordinator, and now he's kind of in no man's land. And Kirby Smart was one of the people that advocated for him to be hired at Alabama as an analyst. And that kind of got him back up on his feet. He went out to Colorado or Colorado State, one of the two, ended up coming back to Alabama as well. So they spent some time together. Clearly, Kirby Smart has some respect for the guy. He's a believer in Billy Napier. So I'm kind of interested to see how the dynamic maybe changes a little bit in that instance between Kirby Smart has a lot more respect for Billy Napier right now than he did for Dan Mullen of any of his years at Florida.
Yeah, I think it changes in the sense of you don't necessarily see him, despise the other head coach, which is it means the approach might be a little different in the sense of late in the game, maybe he doesn't try to like embarrass the other guy, right? Like you're not trying to just demolish. You're definitely going to still try to win and win by a large margin because it is Florida, but maybe you don't go for
I don't know that he's going into halftime talking about, I want to break these people. That like I don't know that you're getting one of those halftime speeches. Maybe I don't know. I mean, it's still Kirby Smart.
It is still a big game, and it is still Florida. He can't stand
high.
Florida as a whole, so maybe he still does.
His hatred for Florida does not change.
No, but the respect for the guy on the other sideline definitely.
And I think
increases.
that changes some things in the grand scheme of
I think
things.
it definitely impacts some of the game in a different way. Like he will not try to like be a complete jerk, if that makes sense. Like I'm trying to use choice words, but he won't like necessarily run off the field, saying what he said in past years where everybody's read lips and saw what he's saying about Florida and stuff like that.
Kirby does not hide it when he doesn't like you. I think what he did in South Carolina when Georgia got that first down and he's staring across the sideline saying,
boom,
first down.
Yeah,
and
first down.
There's some profanity inserted in there that we won't use on
the show. But at the
same
time, okay, so using that as an example, I don't know how much it changes some of it because he's doing that and Shane Beamer coached for him.
I'm just saying.
So no. I'm just saying in the sense of like the passion will still probably be there.
That's true.
Because he clearly he obviously doesn't hate Shane Beamer. He hired Shane Beamer. Like Shane Beamer was on his staff for a year, but only a year. But he was still on the staff for a year,
nonetheless.
So but my point of it is, I think that maybe he's still going to have that passion and dislike for Florida on the sideline, but I think maybe there's
I think that just
a little bit more respect in general.
That's something special that comes with your head coach playing at your school. I mean, he played at the University of Georgia, so he knows how big of a game this is. He knows how much he's supposed to hate the Florida Gators and how big of a game this is for the program every single week. So,
yeah, absolutely. And as far as like the players, I think they have to go into it with the mindset of going, they have to go into it with we do want to break their backs. We do want to be like the dominant team. We need to go in with the confidence of it, but we need to go in there with like the discipline to make sure we stay within our means and make sure we don't get cocky. We don't have that like
you don't say crap.
No, you don't say anything.
You just point at the scoreboard.
Yep,
and they're gonna have a big opportunity to do that on Saturday. I think the point spread right now is 22.5 with Georgia as the favor. And I think Georgia fans have gotten so used to these massive point spreads because it seems like every single week, no matter who you're playing, it's minus 25 points, Georgia's favor. 35 points if you're playing someone like Vanderbilt or a Kent State. I mean, every single week, Georgia's favored by this mass amount of points. But guys, this is different for it to be this wide for the Florida game. It would be, if that number holds, it would be the largest point spread in series history for either team. Whether it's Florida being favored or Georgia. 22.5 points. That's a lot of points, Stoddard.
That's a lot of points. We were talking about this before the game, and you go back and you've seen, obviously you've seen one team win by more than 22 points in the history. Georgia's won by 40. Florida's won by 40 at times. There are games where they get out of hand late in that game too, and the late touchdowns are scored to really pad it, all that kind of stuff. But the spread itself, with the expectation of there being that big of a gap between the two teams, is such an uncomfortable spot for me. Like, as a fan, I'm sitting here looking at it going, man, I think that they could win by more than that. Sure. I really do. But at the same time, you're going, it is Florida.
Man.
It is a game that you always clinch up while you're watching until you get it in hand, until you get that lead. I'm always so uncomfortable with it.
This is how I say you should view it. Florida in the 1990s beat Georgia every single time but once. Georgia only beat Florida one time in the 90s. And they dominated them for the most part in the early 2000s as well. It really seemed like when Rick orchestrated that beautiful touchdown celebration where the whole team is flooding the end zone after Sean Marino punches in the end zone, that kind of started to turn the tides a little bit back into Georgia's favor. But Florida absolutely dominated this rivalry for a good 15 years, for a long, long time. And so now Georgia is back in favor. They've absolutely destroyed Florida ever since Kirby Smart's first year as head coach at Georgia. I mean, 42-7. Then they beat him by, I believe 27 points the next year, 7 points the next year. Then last year, they absolutely demolished them again. So I'd say enjoy the freaking moment because this has been a series of streaks. Both teams, if you go back and look at the matchup history, you'll just see red, 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 blue, 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 red, red. Like it switches back and forth. So Georgia's on their streak right now. So enjoy it, embrace it. This is the golden era of Georgia football. Not many times you get to be favored over Florida 22.5 points. So freaking embrace it, rub it in their nose, and just bathe in all this glory that you're being praised about right now.
And especially when you get to hopefully walk back, like you, hey, Dan, you're talking about. It is a long ride back from Jacksonville. I've been down there. I've been down there after wins, and you get to drive back. That's a fun drive because you're excited, you're happy. I've had those drives where we have lost, and it is not such a fun drive back, and it is a quiet ride with the people in the car because everybody's kind of just disappointed and upset. But yeah, it's a long ride back to think about whatever happened, whatever the result was of that game, and it means a lot to the fans. It means a lot to the players. It's a lot of fun down there. If you're going, go enjoy it. It definitely is. I wanted to go. I was looking to go, and it just didn't quite fall into my lap the way I usually do. So I'm taking a year off this year, unfortunately. But if you're going, definitely you need to enjoy it. And also, I'm pretty sure and we'll get into some other stuff a little bit more later, but I think the contract with the Jacksonville, I think, is through 2023 with an option for 2024. So if you're going with all the talks out there of like all the stuff going on between the two schools of whether or not it should be there still or if they're going to do it home and home and stuff, if you're going, make sure you enjoy it this year, maybe next year, because it could be changing after that potentially down the road. But let's get back onto, we've talked about like the game itself. Let's look at some of the players in this game, right? You were talking about this earlier, so I'm going to let you actually kind of dive into it. But you got Stetson Bennett playing against Florida for the third time.
Mm-hmm.
First game, he got hurt. He did hurt his shoulder. You end up putting Mathis in, and that's the actual game, the only game that Georgia's lost to Florida under Kirby Smart.
Aside from the first year,
that's the middle one in there after like the dominance that Georgia's had. So, what are you looking for from Stetson in this game to actually have a good game against Florida?
I mean, it kind of goes in the same way about Kirby Smart being a former player and having a lot of hate for Florida. Stetson Bennett grew up a Georgia fan. His dream was to play at the University of Georgia. So he obviously grew up with a lot of hate for Florida as well. And he's played really well this season, regardless of what people want to say. I know he's had his highs and lows, just like any player does throughout a season. But, you and I were talking about like the position he is in to potentially finish in regards to career totals and the like second time all-time passing leader potentially in Georgia football history. Things like that. He's on pace to put up great numbers this season. I think that third time around going against Florida, Georgia's getting the ball rolling now, and especially the way that Florida chooses to defend tight ends too. They don't cover them very well. They typically leave them just running butt naked wide open on the field, which when Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers are on the other sideline, that is not a plan for success if you're a defense. So I think Stetson has a big game on Saturday. I put him as one of my players to watch. So I think he bounces back in a big way, and I think he really wants to just drive the nail into the coffin on his third game against Florida, probably his last season in college football. So I think he's going to have a big day, and you're going to need it'd be nice to see him have just an absolute stellar day on the field, especially preparing for what you have later on in the schedule.
I think it's definitely going to be a good performance from him. I'm with you. I don't think Florida's defense is they don't defend the pass extremely well in general. If you look back at their, the yardage they give up and everything like that, which they give up a crap ton of yards regardless, but they do give up a lot of passing yards. And they struggle to cover, like you said, over the middle of the field with those tight ends and those. I don't trust their linebackers in coverage. I don't think that their linebackers are great in coverage, and so I do think that they're going to kind of get beat in that aspect of it. So
I mean, it's a defense that has the boogeyman on the other side. On the other side of the defense, this man is 420 pounds. Is that what they said?
Yeah.
If you guys haven't seen this, not only is this just a massive human being, like I don't know how they have pants for the guy. I mean, he is just huge, big, massive weight on the field. He's a space eater, is what he is. I mean, It's what they probably want. It's probably their version of Jordan Davis, if there ever is another version of Jordan Davis. But
Jordan Davis was an athlete. This dude's just big.
yeah,
That's the difference.
that's all. That's all
Like,
you can
he's
really
just
say about
heavy.
him. Like, I don't know that he's good at anything or like excels at anything, but he can hold a block and make a gap just a little bit
Yeah,
smaller.
the dude's just huge. So yeah, he threw that one kid like a frisbee. That's because the dude is built like a house, and like,
Shoot, yeah.
But as far as his ability to do
You
something
got
other than
overweight Shaquille O'Neal on the other sideline, dude. I mean, yeah,
He's gonna be
he
slow.
can be tossing some people. Congrats.
he's going to be slow. He's not going to sit there and chase down a quarterback. He's not going to sit there and chase or get the edge on a running back or something like that.
I don't know why
he's not.
Any team that, like, if you hit for one of your plays like 8 or 10 yards, run the hurry up if he's not on the field. Make that joker jog all the way down the field every single time. I mean,
I don't know.
Game plan.
You get him tired. He still can just lay down and then disrupt the middle part just because of that.
He's in a good spot. He really can't do anything wrong. Regardless, like, just his pure
big.
size, he could do something good. Like, trip someone up just laying on the ground, just stand there and do nothing. You're doing something right in some sense. So
you do not want him landing on you.
But that's pretty much one of the few highlights of Florida's defense. Brooks Austin talks about in his recent film review of them is that they're trying to adopt the same type of defense that Georgia is running right now and has been running for a long time under Kirby Smart. They just don't have the personnel yet to be able to run it as successful as Georgia. And it's why Georgia's really the only team that you see running it as well as they do, because it tells you how hard it is to play that type of defense, because one misassignment, everything's busted. Your whole defense is blown, and you're going to give up a big play. And it tells you how disciplined those guys are every single down. And it's crazy. So Florida's trying to kind of adopt that, and for good reason. Why not? Georgia just won a national championship, a large part due to that defense. So
100%. Yeah, that defense is incredible. If you've got the right people running it, it is insane. And Georgia definitely does it very well. I think that's why, that's where you really need good linebackers to run that defense.
That's
you really
your bread and butter.
Your linebacker, and then Georgia's had those linebackers for so long, and that's where, once again, I say that I think that Florida's linebackers are not as good in coverage, and they're not as good as running.
We were watching some of the film against Kentucky, me and Stoddard were before the show, and it was like every single play we watched of them,
one of the linebackers.
The two linebackers were just miscommunicating every single play.
Look out for number 2 to blow coverage at some point, or be following the wrong guy or doing something. Number two
guys would be covering the same person. They would get in each other's way and trip each other up. So the linebacker play is not really there. They do have Britton Cox, which I know he's kind of a laughing stock of Georgia's fan base because of his tweets.
He's going to be more on the edge though, and so he's not going to be your middle.
He's good when
he
wants to be good. The plays that he wants to be good, he can be good, and he can be a difference
maker.
Or
kind of like what Zach is talking about, not being able to run the quarterback down. There's a little bit of that. There's plays like that.
He's like, all right, whatever, get me out of here. Yeah. Someone else tackle Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, somebody else, just not me. I can't do it. He peels off, and I'm toast.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, watch for number 2 on defense for Florida. I bet you're going to look back at plays, and if they give us a good view of something and show what happened over the middle of the field, you're going to see that guy in the wrong spot at least once during that game. I promise.
Watch Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington and Florida's linebackers. That's going to be
a big aspect.
It is, and I expect both of those guys to have big days. Darnell Washington has been huge for Georgia this season. He's putting up really good numbers. Brock Bowers is Brock Bowers. I mean, he may not be putting up the same numbers that he did last season, but heck, it's kind of hard to replicate that after having such an incredible true freshman season, to go and do that yet again your next season, especially when people know about you now. I mean, everybody knows who you are at that point, and people are going to be keying in on you more than ever in your second season. So, but still, I think those two guys are going to have big days. I think that's going to translate to Stetson having a big day. And we'll kind of shift over to the defense for Georgia. I don't know that Florida has a decent run game. They do have a pretty solid run game. That's kind of what they live and die by.
They run by nearly 200 yards a game. I think it's like 193 a game.
And let's be honest, a lot of that has to do with Anthony Richardson has not had success throwing the ball until he played Tennessee and threw for freaking 435 yards.
It's the only game he's had a good game.
Outside of that game, his average passing yard total has been like 210 versus everybody else. And then he throws for over 400 against Tennessee. So, a large part of their running game being such a big focal point of their offense is because that's what Anthony Richardson does best. And then they also have some pretty solid running backs as well. And their offensive line is not too shabby, so they can get the job done there. But then again, what's one of Georgia's biggest strengths?
Just the run defense.
Yeah, stopping the run,
Yeah.
stuffing the run. They're so gap sound. Again, that's going back to the linebackers.
To give you the number on it, Georgia only allows 83 yards rushing per game, and Florida currently, I lied, it's not 193. It's actually 213 rushing yards a game for Florida. So they're running really, really well. Yes. But Georgia is really, really good on the other side of that. And you need your defensive line and your linebackers to have a good game against this type of offense, because that is what is going to lock you down. I don't think Georgia's secondary is going to have a problem, like you said, with Anthony Richardson. When we've watched games, right? We watched the Kentucky game. We've watched like other games that he's played this year, and he really struggles if he looks and then starts trying to run so fast that like it's not a way to beat you, except all of a sudden where he put up 400 yards. Yeah. That was the only game where he actually looked good throwing the ball downfield. And so Georgia's secondary, who has a good secondary, and yes, Dan Jackson is out, but you still got Starks to step up back there and play more downs.
David Daniels, Sisavon,
yeah,
something like that.
I forgot his hyphen.
I'll just stick with David Daniel, but David Daniel's probably going to be filling in those shoes back there as well, because Dan Jackson got plugged in a lot during the dime packages for Georgia.
I think so, yeah.
You'll probably see an uptick in snap count for David Daniel, who's a sophomore. And he's gotten some limited playing time this year. I think he's appeared in 3 games, and he's looked pretty decent, so now he's going to be plugged into that spot. But, yeah, Georgia's first in the SEC in passing yards allowed, and I believe they are 8th in the nation in passing yards allowed. So, regardless, they're really good at stopping the run, which is Florida's strength on offense. And then when you have to rely on Anthony Richardson to throw the ball, he's going to be going up against the best secondary in the SEC right now.
Yeah, they're only averaging 217 yards passing a game.
Yes.
And that's not going to win you a game like this.
No.
When you're going to be, you can't be one-dimensional in this type of game. Georgia can't be one-dimensional either. Georgia definitely has to be able to get the run game going and be able to throw the ball, because you cannot in this game, these two teams are really good at keying in on like the one thing that you can do. If you can only do one thing well, they're going to get you. And that's why I think Georgia has success in this game, because Florida relies so heavily on that rushing game. I mean, Anthony Richardson has just under 400 yards rushing this season. That's what you're talking about, where he contributes so much in that aspect of the game. And I think that that's going to be something that really, really ends up. But just look at the final box score of this game, and I bet you that you're going to see a pretty big difference in what they usually do versus what they actually can do in this game.
And Anthony Richardson, almost every game, at least the ones that I've watched. I don't watch every single Florida game, but I watch the big ones when it's late at night. It's the night's kind of settling in, and he always has a throw that's kind of like, did he even see that defender? I mean, just throws it like almost just says, here, have the ball.
He has the WTF moment.
Yeah.
That real
definitely
big.
It happened last year against Georgia when he threw the pick 6 to Nakobe Dean, and he just got eaten alive against Georgia last year. Nolan Smith forced 2 turnovers back-to-back, a fumble, an interception of his own, and then that was followed up by a Nakobe Dean pick 6. Guy just absolutely crumbled against Georgia last year. So the only thing for Georgia is that you're probably not going to see Jalen Carter this week either. He's been very limited in practice this week, which is not a good sign. He's not going to go unless he is 100% ready. I mean, that's just going to be the deal with him. And the deal with, Adonai or AD might give it a go this week. You might see him a little bit, just try and get in the mix, see how he feels. I don't know. It's probably not going to see a whole lot of him either. So, but
this is a game that you want to be careful putting those guys in, though, because once again, it's that rival. It's a very physical football game,
especially with an MCL sprain. I believe
it's a very physical football game.
Jalen Carter, you got to be really careful with that, dealing with ligaments in your knee and stuff like that. You got to be real careful with that, especially with what's in his near future draft prospect wise. We're talking about a top 10 draft pick probably. So a lot at stake for him there. So yeah, you're not going to play him unless you absolutely need to. And really, you haven't needed him because other guys behind him have really stepped up. Bear Alexander has been one of them. Warren Brinson has been another guy that's been flashing on the defensive line in the absence of Jalen Carter.
Zion Logue has been out there a good bit.
You've had guys stepping up, which is what Georgia has done. When guys have been injured last year, that was a major story for Georgia. Is that when guys went down, they never missed a beat. You're seeing it again this year at Georgia. Is that, all right, Jalen Carter went down. We'll put in true freshman Bear Alexander. Yeah. Boom. We're looking strong. We're still looking good. Nothing to worry about right now. But still, you'd like to have a Jalen Carter, of course, on the field because he's such a difference maker in every aspect of the game because he draws so much attention, just like many other defensive tackles, to come through Georgia.
Yeah, you absolutely expect Georgia's defense to still play well, even without Jalen Carter. I do think that, having him would make a huge difference in a game like this where you're talking about that run game for the opposing team being so prominent. you could use your starting defensive lineman, who's a top 10 pick,
Absolutely.
like you're talking about. You could definitely use him, and he would definitely impact the game. But how much is he going to impact the game if he's not 100%? And if his knee's hurting, and you risk potentially losing him for the rest of the season,
impact the games after that.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
just kind of have like a little trickle effect of just downward spiral for him. So yeah, I think the conclusion that we're reaching right now is Georgia's going to win by a lot. Probably take the points is probably what I would lean towards right now. I have a hard time seeing the Gators offense having much success against Georgia just because of the style of defense that Georgia plays, what history has said with Anthony Richardson playing against Georgia, and just if they don't have the run game going, they can't do very much. So that's a big reason why Florida kept it so close with Tennessee, because they were just gashing them up the middle. I mean, they were getting chunks of yardage in the run game, where I don't see that happening against Georgia on Saturday. Georgia,
they'll probably get a play or two, but they won't kill you all game. They won't get you all game like that.
Dan, you're always negative Nancy, nervous Nancy, whatever you want to say in the comment section. Have some faith, brother. All right? We're here to tell you why you should be confident. We're giving you all the knowledge. So take it and be confident. That's what I'm saying right now. So
once again, I'm confident. I'm sitting here right now, but like when the game starts, when it's about kickoff and I'm sitting on my couch with a beer in my hand and I'm clenched up waiting to see what's going to happen. And like, as you see Georgia get going, then I can start to relax a little bit more. No. I was just trying to fit in.
I
thought you did. So,
no. So yeah, I'm saying it's not going to be close. I don't think it's going to be a very close game. I think Florida might put up 10 points, maybe. That's what I would say right now. But I just, again, Georgia's defense being able to stop the run, that's what fuels Florida's offense. And if they can't get it going, then you're relying on the arm of Anthony Richardson, and he can't get it done with his arm. He has not proven his way.
I saw this today too. This was funny. It's on Sweet
I think that's a shirt.
College.
I think someone makes that.
Saw that.
That's a shirt.
I saw that today too. That was funny. Yeah. It's pretty funny right there. But so I think that's good on Florida for right now. I think it's going to be a good game for Georgia in general. I think this is a season that, also you hope that Georgia's going to be ready to go in this game, because you don't want, to overlook to Tennessee, because that's a huge game next week. For Tennessee, you don't want this to become a trap game for Georgia where they're overlooking them. It's definitely a team to be cautious with. But let's talk about Georgia's schedule in general and then the home games and stuff like that. Speaking of next week, Georgia versus Tennessee, you get a 3:30 game, and everyone kind of saw it coming. You were just hoping. You were so hoping that CBS would pick up that Alabama-LSU game, but LSU, if they hadn't lost, if LSU had not lost to Florida State to start the season, you would have had a possibility.
Yeah, but even then, no.
But even then, with Tennessee beating Alabama, you knew this was a CBS game.
I was that guy for the last 2 weeks. Every single time I had a friend in class or people talking about it in class about like, oh, I really hope Tennessee is a night game, I was the guy's like, nope. 0%. CBS gets first dibs. It's number 3 versus number 1. You really think they're going to pass that up? No, not a chance. There's no way that they're passing that up right now. I mean, the game was selling tickets on StubHub. There were tickets for $9,000, people. $9,000 for a 50-yard line seat on the visitor side. Not even on Georgia's side. This was the visitor side. It's been ridiculous. This game is insane build-up right now. There's no shot that CBS was passing that game up. And that's been really the big reason why Georgia has not gotten a home game or a home night game this year. And in fact, I'll go ahead and spew off the stat right now. If Georgia versus Georgia Tech is not a 7:30 primetime game or a night game in general for Georgia, they would be the first reigning national champion to not have a primetime game at home the following year since 1998 when it happened to Michigan. It's pretty shocking that the number 1 team in the nation right now and the reigning national champion are in this type of situation right now. And I get it. Like I said, CBS, whenever you can put the dogs on the TV, you got to do it. I mean, they bring in great TV ratings every single week. And so, yeah, I believe the UGA versus Samford game was the highest rating televised event on ESPN Plus ever in the history. So it's just
ESPN Plus.
And also, I forgot to add this. If you're clinging on to Georgia and Georgia Tech being a night game, don't. And then the odds are very slim. It hasn't been a night game since 2010. So, and considering where Georgia Tech is at right now, I don't know that. But it is frustrating the aspect of, everybody wants to say like, oh, well, it's because Georgia's home schedule this year was horrible, blah, 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 blah. Alabama had night games against Utah State this year. They get like 3 or 4 night games every single year. And I think what it mostly has to do with is that Kirby Smart prefers to play earlier in the day. He has admitted that. He said this week he likes playing at 3:30. And I believe he's also said, I don't mind the noon games either. So I think that kind of has a factor in it.
I hate noon games.
I know, but
I'm okay with. I'm okay with a 3:30 game.
Game day, I believe, is at Penn State, Ohio State.
Probably, I would assume.
I want to say it's at that game, Morgan. I see you asking that in the
comments.
I
think that's true.
I believe it's there,
true.
But it'll definitely. They haven't announced it yet, but I can guarantee you that it's going to be in Athens.
The only way that it's not in Athens is if Tennessee loses.
And even then, I think it's still in Athens.
Probably,
because I think it's still in Athens.
Because there's no game that's going to have that much weight on it still, even at that point. And but Tennessee, you expected it to be a 3:30. I mean, it'll still be dark by the time that game's over. It's still it gets dark at 6 something now.
I made the comment as like, the day, so that night, that Saturday night when Georgia plays Tennessee, that's time change.
I know. If it was the next
only
week,
it was a day earlier or like the next week or whatever, then you really would have a night game because it's going to be dark by about like you said by 5:30, 6 o'clock. Then you do, and it still might get dark enough to where you can do that against Tennessee. Quarter. Yeah, it's so, but still, I know fans want it's pitch black when the ball's kicked off. You got the lights on from the get-go.
Everyone wants that Notre Dame feel from 2019 where the lights are out and all that stuff going on before kickoff. It is a very fun environment. The good thing is for those that are annoyed about it this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe next year starts the SEC and ESPN contract, or is it the year after?
It's the year after.
So 2023 is the last year of it.
Then your games.
Then you won't get those 3:30 SEC or 3:30 CBS games anymore.
So then, when the SEC starts their contract with the ESPN, guess what? Every single primetime game, or guess what? Every single game of the week is going to be plugged into 7:30 more than likely. All those games.
That 8 o'clock ABC time slot or whatever.
They might start doing noon games as well. I don't know how they'll do that because you got to think every other conference does the big noon kickoff. Big Ten does a lot of noon kickoffs for their big games. And then the Big 12 does it as well. ESPN might want to try and compete with that a little bit, and obviously you would be able to with the SEC. You're going to get that draw towards that game. So, but I think for the most part, your games of the week when the ESPN contract starts up, they're going to be 7:30, and then when that happens, Georgia's probably going to be playing in a lot more night games at home for sure.
The only thing I worry about with the ESPN contract when you get into that is those ESPN Plus games and stuff like that because you are going to get more of those. You're 100% going to get more.
Georgia having the highest ratings for that Stanford game is not a good sign.
No,
that's not a good thing because now they know, okay, we can put Georgia over there and people are still going to watch. A lot of people are going to watch.
And they're going to subscribe to ESPN Plus if they don't have,
so
whatever.
So boycott the next one, fellas. Like we ain't watching. We'll kick on the radio, listen to Scott Howard. All right, we're not paying for the ESPN Plus or whatever. So boycott the next one if you really want Georgia to be on live TV instead of ESPN Plus.
Well, and I like the night games and stuff like that. I really do. But at the same time, if you're just winning, that's what you want to do is just win. And it's still going to be a fun environment, right? Like you're still getting 3:30 is not terrible. The only thing I don't like is I don't like listening to the game on CBS and like listening to them call the game. Like I honestly, I'm that stereotypical Georgia fan that does not like listening to Gary Danielson talk and all that kind of stuff. I got it. I know that there's a lot of us out there, but I'm trying to be at that game regardless, so I won't necessarily have to listen to it. But you still get time to tailgate up front of it. Then you have a little bit of time after the game. This is the bonus to it, is after the game, you have time to get home and watch one of those night games and stuff like that. And
I think
the second
3:30 is almost a perfect spot for that aspect when you're thinking of it that way. So, and at the same time, too, if Georgia wins the national championship, this ain't gonna be what you remember. You're not gonna be thinking about Georgia not getting a single night game this year. It won't even matter. So, like Stoddard was saying, if you keep on winning, if that's what you're doing, if you're still winning every single week, and you go on to win a national championship, it ain't gonna matter. Nobody's gonna care. Oh yeah, this statement, "Shut up, Gary," which is being commented in the YouTube comments right now. If you're listening to us on audio only. That has been said many of times in my household.
I've said that one so many times. It's fun. You can't help it.
And it's so funny that everyone says it. Like it's a universal, it's a nationwide statement that everybody uses. I'm sorry that Gary Danielson had so much hatred towards him, and has so much hatred towards him. But man, it definitely gets brutal sometimes, especially when you get in those SEC or those CBS games against Alabama. Is raps, bro. I mean, you're going to be listening to an Alabama love fest for the next 65 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, for sure on that. But I think that's enough talking about CBS in general. Let's get into our pick'ems for the week. Classic City pick'ems.
We both need to bounce back.
We do need to bounce back. Last week
we went
2 weeks ago.
We went 0 for 2, both of us.
Last week was a rough one. You barely went 0 for 2. It was a bad thing.
I think
you missed combined, I think, by like 3 points.
A point and a half, I think.
Was it a point and a half?
I think it was a point and a half.
I know one of them was a half a point. It was close.
One of them was a half. I can't remember the games, but yeah, one of them I missed by a half a point. The other one I missed by a point.
Yeah, it was close.
It was a rough one for me. So,
but I'll let you start with your first one.
Oh shoot! Well, I got to pull it up first. I can't remember exactly. It's been a long week, man. All right, so the brain ain't fully there right now. Anyways. So the first one I got is Syracuse minus 2.5, and I can't remember who they play. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really Notre Dame. They're 2.5 favorites over Notre Dame right now. I think Syracuse is a really solid team this year. They gave Clemson a run for their money just last week. Almost pulled off the upset against Clemson, but then they threw an interception on their final drive of the game, which helped them steal the deal. But Notre Dame's been kind of struggling this year in their first year under Marcus Freeman. So not a very solid situation over there. Syracuse is 6-1 and the 16th ranked team in the nation. So I like Syracuse in that one at minus 2.5. I think they would. I like the orange, baby. Go orange.
I'm gonna say that I just have zero confidence in Notre Dame this season as a whole. Anyways, they've looked so bad against some really really bad teams, and so I'm with you on that. I kind of like that pick as well. I saw it once you sent it to me. I started looking through the games. I was like, yeah, I kind of like that game too, especially with the other options that are out there. But a game that really stood out to me, because I don't know how this is the spread on it. I really don't understand. But South Carolina -4 against Missouri. -4 against Missouri?
Yeah, South Carolina's rolling hot right now.
Did we just see what they just did last week?
To Texas A&M.
To Texas A&M. I understand it's Texas A&M, and they're not.
Funny you say that, though, considering.
I know. But saying... 4 points against the South Carolina team. South Carolina's at home too, and this is I think it's a 4:00 game, so it's a midday game too. It's South Carolina fans are going to be ready to go. That stadium's going to be loud.
Yeah,
I don't think Missouri.
They're at the peak of South Carolina football for the first time in a while.
They just cracked the top 25 again, and I expect them to roll, and I expect them to win by more than 4 points.
South Carolina has been known as at least you're not Vanderbilt team in the SEC East for a while now, and so now they're
Missouri.
Ranked number 25 right now.
But that's what Missouri is, though, is you're not Vanderbilt, you're Missouri.
Yeah, at least you're not Vanderbilt, all right? Congratulations. That's kind of where you're at. My next one, I was kind of the same boat as you were for this game. I got Arkansas minus 3.5 versus Auburn. I know Auburn has been looking better over the past couple of weeks, but I just really like Arkansas and Sam Pittman. I've said that before on the show. I don't really know what's going on at Auburn. You watch them play, and it's just kind of like
they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, they don't know their identity right now. I think I saw something this week, and this may be completely false, but I know I saw it on Twitter where someone said that Brian Harsin is not allowing players to redshirt unless they have a medical reason this season. He's not allowing them to. So basically, if you ain't hurt, you playing. And I just don't think it's a good situation down there. Their quarterback situation, another thing that they really have absolutely no clue what they're doing. The quarterbacks don't really have a single clue as to what they're doing either. So I like the Razorbacks in that one as minus 3.5.
So this next one is a weird one for me because last week, what I just said a second ago,
I'm doing it.
I'm doing it. I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go with it, and I know that I might get a comment or two on this one. But I'm going to go with this next one as well because it's such a low spread. Ole Miss -2 against Texas A&M. Texas A&M they had their issue
from today with Lane Kiffin.
Yes, I did.
Those are pretty funny.
I did. I said Lane Kiffin definitely is not a fan of Texas A&M. Yeah. I've seen some stuff on there with that because he was talking about keeping that coach, right? He was talking
defensive coordinator.
He's talking about keeping the defensive coordinator, but he said they got outbid by Texas A&M, which seems to be the
popular theme with that team.
Yeah,
with that program.
So
wink, wink, nudge.
Yeah,
nudge.
that was a shot right there for sure. But what we didn't get? We didn't get Jimbo Fisher on a press conference afterwards.
Yeah, no,
so
not yet.
Not yet. We have 10 a.m. tomorrow. Emergency press conference coming.
Let me clear
the air of this. We did not outbid.
Honestly, if I was Jimbo Fisher right now, I'd be losing every game. I would be losing as much as I can at this point. The season's kind of washed, and there's a $88 million buyout or whatever the number is right now for my contract. So if I'm Jimbo Fisher, I'm just kind of kicking back the rest of the season. Like, all right, let's see what you're about right now. All right, we got this big chunk of money. It'd be like the Ed Orgeron situation. If I'm Jimbo Fisher and they brought me in the office,
he said, which door do you want me to leave out of?
Yeah.
Like, when do you want me to go?
When do you want me to leave, and what door should I go out of? Because I'm gone.
I'll be
out of here in a heartbeat. You won't ever hear from me again.
Orgeron's interview where he was talking about that was so funny, dude. He was like,
I won a national championship, formed one of the greatest teams in college football history, and now I'm about to get a big buyout from you as well for sucking. Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds good to me.
This right here is a big reason that I'm on my pick this week right here as well. The OC for Texas A&M, I genuinely think that's a huge problem for them, because the 1 year that James Coley was in Athens was 2019.
There's a reason it was only 1 year.
And that's the only coach, unless they've got promoted and left because of something really good. Georgia didn't just let an offensive coordinator go that quick, especially Kirby Smart has not done that. One season, there were a lot of problems. It was a terrible
offense. Was brutal.
It was so hard to watch as a Georgia fan, and he was gone after one season just like that. And Texas A&M is really struggling with an offensive identity. They aren't looking good at all. I understand that Ole Miss had a really bad week last week against LSU. It was a terrible game for them. God awful. They got just boat raced, and that was a weird one for them. But I think that their offense is going to turn around and be able to score, and I do not think Texas A&M is going to be able to score to even be in that game. Definitely not by 2 points.
Yeah. So, hopping on the Lane train, huh?
I'm on the Lane train this week.
This is the second time that Stoddard has hopped on the Lane train, so we might be looking at an Ole Miss Rebel closet fan right here.
Well, no, remember when we said if Georgia wasn't a program anymore.
I know.
I said Ole Miss.
I know. This is my second time picking Arkansas. That's the team I picked as well in that scenario. So
sometimes we favor.
It's only fitting.
Some teams out there.
Recap: I got Syracuse -2.5 over Notre Dame, and then I also have Arkansas -3.5 over Auburn.
And I have South Carolina -4 versus Missouri, and then Ole Miss -2 versus Texas A&M.
Boom, locked in. No more discussion. No more backseas. No more cutsies. Nothing.
It's over with.
Stay.
All right. So this is your segment, and we kind of came up with this one. Yeah. It fits the topic of the week. We're talking about Florida this week, so we got King of the Hill. And so what better to do than to bring up something about Georgia and Florida for something relevant.
Something newsworthy.
We try to do that, right?
Y'all have been talking about in the comment section already.
And we kind of hinted at a little bit ago as well with the game location, right? So when it comes to the Georgia-Florida game, it's in Jacksonville, has been for a very long time.
Take over the segment here.
I was kicking it to you.
You just stole all my.
But I was going to let you talk first. Listen, last episode, I let you open and close the episode. I can do King of the Hill this week. Okay. All right. All right.
Go.
So I'm about to throw my pen at you in a second.
That's assault, brother.
I'll turn the camera off first. I'll make sure it's afterwards. If he comes home, Morgan, with some pin marks or something like that, just ignore it. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it. But anyways, the location in Jacksonville. Where do you stand on that argument of the game being played down in Jacksonville?
I kind of have two different perspectives. One, as a student, and a student who has never been in Jacksonville, I'd like for it to stay in Jacksonville, because I'd like to go down there at least once. I'd like to go experience that game. A stadium split 50-50 right down the middle, red and black, orange and blue. That is something I would like to experience, going down St. Simons, Jacksonville, whatever, make it a whole weekend out of it. There's nothing really like it in the sport of college football where that really gets to happen. So I would selfishly like to experience that just once in my life. But on the other hand, I think home and home would be so much fun. Especially, and that's also speaking from a student's perspective as well. You're talking about we get to pack in Sanford Stadium every other year. It's going to be packed out. The environment's going to be unreal. And Florida fans have to come into the state of Georgia for like the first time ever for a football game, and they have to endure what Sanford Stadium is. And then not only that, but this is the big talking point of it all, and really why Kirby Smart wants it to be moved: recruiting visits. That'd be the biggest weekend for recruiting visits every other year in Athens. And I know you like recruits can go down to Jacksonville now. Like Georgia can buy recruits tickets to go to the
But this is
game.
the first year they can do that, even though
Yeah,
that's a new rule.
but still, that's just them getting to go to the game, and it's not them experiencing a game day in Athens. It's not them getting to be around any of the guys on the team. They might get to go meet up with Coach Smart briefly after the game and say, "Hey, thanks for the tickets," and then they have to go on home. Like it's not like what it typically is when a recruit goes on a official visit to a weekend game in Athens, where they get the whole spread, and they are given everything that they want. They get to experience it all of what it would be like to be on that football team, whereas you can't get that at a neutral site.
No, it definitely changes the atmosphere but I'm my side of it is selfish side of being a fan. I have gone down to Jacksonville numerous times, and I try to go most years. It is such a fun environment to go down there because like, you start walking. The thing is, it's like it's more than just the game that's being played at 3:30 on CBS every single year. It's you get down there and you tailgate, you walk around all this stuff that's going on out there. That's the experience outside of the actual game too that you get to do. And like you'll walk past a whole section full of Florida fans and get yelled at while you walk by, but then you'll go back, walk a little bit further and you'll go through a section of Georgia fans and you'll have them, handing you food and all kinds of stuff and just having a good time, even though they don't know who you are. You can get that in Athens sometimes too, but there's just something about it down in Jacksonville that's a little bit more of that type of stuff that you experience as you're going. And to me personally, I love it being down there. It is a fun game to do. If they make it a home and home, I'm not making the trip to Gainesville.
No.
Like I'm not. I don't want to do that. That sounds
Although
terrible.
I will say it would be kind of cool to experience the swamp because you hear so much hype around it and how loud it gets in that place. So I would like to go.
I would probably go at least.
I would like
once.
to go to LSU once. I would like to go experience
LSU. I definitely
once. Like all those
Yeah.
stadiums that it's like, man, it gets so freaking loud. Like I would like to go experience those game day atmospheres in those different stadiums. And I think the best thing that they could do, and I think this might end up being what they do, is that maybe you do a home neutral, like every third year, or like some people were saying in the comments is every fifth year.
I just saw it a second ago and I lost the
It was
comment.
down at the very bottom.
Yeah,
right there.
Here it
like
is.
Every fifth year.
I kind of would like if you're gonna do a home and home. I would like this
because I know that like the locals down in St. Simons and places like that. Like this is a massive weekend for business for them. This is huge. I mean, it brings in students, it brings in people from all over the Southeast for this game. So it's a huge weekend for business for them. It's huge for Jacksonville. All those types of things. So I don't know that. I think it'd be horrible to kind of just strip that away from them entirely. So I would think it'd be kind of cool to do like, you do a few years of home and home, and then you rotate in a neutral site game every now and then as well. I think that would be a good compromise for the situation. Everybody's happy in that scenario, and I think that might ultimately be what they end up doing.
I think that's probably what's gonna. I do think that once this contract ends, as long as you still got Kirby Smart there, which you obviously will, he's a huge advocate for it, and he's basically going to get whatever he wants from like the athletic department at Georgia. And so if he goes in there and say it, so that means that then you're going to get Josh Brooks really advocating for whatever Kirby Smart wants in that as well. We know what he wants, and so you know what's going to probably happen on that. But on the bright side of it, that would mean every other year that game in Athens is a good home game. So everyone talks about the home schedule. Like this year, everyone hated on the home schedule, which now Tennessee's turned out to be the biggest game of the year in the SEC in general. And it's your home game this time. So you ended up with a really good home game. But every year, that's going to be a good home game. Like I said, even though this year Georgia's favored by 22.5 points, it's still going to be a fun game for Georgia fans down in Jacksonville and stuff like that. And Florida fans get excited for it as well. How many Florida fans we see make that drive up to Athens, we'll see. We'll see how well they travel. I know Georgia fans travel very well. I think Georgia fans will go down to Gainesville as a whole, but I don't know.
People are willing to travel up to Athens just because it's Athens. Athens is a great place in general, regardless of college football. Athens is a great city to go and experience. I think people would like to come travel to that and get to experience that, especially on a game day. But, I mean, we've covered everything possible in regards to this game for this weekend for Georgia, Florida. We've covered it all. We've done everything. We gave you our pick'ems. We talked about Georgia's upcoming schedule and night games probably not looking too likely for Georgia in regards to a home game this year. And it's going to start really ramping up as the season continues with Tennessee coming in next week. And then you also got Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Georgia Tech remaining on the schedule. So content is only going to continue to fuel around here. We're going to be bringing it to you every single week, guys. So stick around, like and subscribe if you have not already. That helps us with the algorithm. We got the Twitter handles that Stoddard is about to pull up on the bottom of your screen right there. Boom. I mean, we're aligned with it and everything. So whichever one we're sitting under or above, that's the one. That's our Twitter handle. So go and follow those if you want to. We put some pretty good content over there as well. And we also provide updates on the show. Like last week, when we didn't have a show, we put something out on Twitter to let you know, like, hey, don't be expecting us tonight because we ain't going to be around. So do all that stuff for us. Like, subscribe, follow on Twitter. And Stoddard, you get to close out.
As always, keep it classy in the Classic City, and we will catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Classic City Sports. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Classic City Sports Crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at the Stodfather, to Jonathan at Dr._J Will, and make sure to follow at Classic City Pod for show updates. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime,
two simple words which express the sentiments of the